What do people think is a scam, but they actually just don't understand it? Hello! It is I, Shepherd, Brother Goose, Mr. Internet Recap. Whatever it is you would like to call me, this is what my face looks like. I will leave it up to you to decide if it's a face for radio or if it's worthy of being seen publicly here on the internet. In any case, I'll be reading some stories with my face on screen from time to time. And for the keen viewers, you would have already seen my face on my personal channel, Brother Goose. Now we'll just have double the fun and see it over here as well. With that being said, I will grab my trusty old glasses and read the first story here. Story 1. Getting a raise that gets you to a higher tax bracket. Seriously, people don't even use Google to verify it. When you get a tax raise, only the portion of the salary that goes above the bracket is getting the higher taxes. And you absolutely cannot convince them otherwise. They won't hear it. About a decade ago, I worked as an auto detailer when I was trying to get my foot in the door, and the shop paid a flag rate. That meant that a job paid a fixed amount of hours, no matter how long it took you to do it, thus rewarding expertise and efficiency. A detailed job on a car could pay a flag rate of 3.2 hours, but if you were efficient and lucky, it might only take 2 hours. Drawback is sometimes it takes 4 and still only pays 3.2. So better than average mechanics and detailers could easily get 12 to 14 hours in an 8 to 10 hour day. It wasn't uncommon to see 140-hour paychecks for 80 to 100 hours of work. But I still knew people who would never go above 80 or 100 hours flagged because, quote, if I get more hours, the government will just take more taxes out. Yeah, dumb guy, but you'll also be taking home a frick load more money at $16 an hour. Dude, I worked payroll for a while, and people kept filing in for the last paycheck of the year to change their withholding to single, so they'd get more money back. They would then come in for the first paycheck of the year and change their withholding status to married and add their children in. They swore up and down that if they did this, they'd get a higher tax return. 3 years ago, people did this, and I could not explain it to some of them. And I have no clue who put this idea in their heads. I've been around money-strapped people most of my life and never heard of this. Tax returns are based on the actual amount withheld, not the status on your W-4. So if you change your status to single and leave it that way, more money is withheld from your check, and your return is bigger. But that's because you didn't take the pay home to begin with. Edit. Half of you guys aren't getting it. They weren't actually withholding their pay. They would change it for a single pay period, and then they would think that they'd get the money as though they'd withheld it for the full year. This is precisely why CPAs exist, to interpret the confusing tax code for the layperson. But also I feel that the whole process is purposefully kept overcomplicated by having us enter all our information every year to file returns. For the most part, the government has the ability to calculate how much you owe or overpaid throughout the year, and, if all your income was over the table, that is. But because the U.S. has this notion of being screwed over by paying taxes, we are incentivized to get the best deal for ourselves. I forget which country it is that does this, but they give a pie chart breakdown of exactly how your tax contributions are being spent to improve society. If we had that level of visibility in the U.S. and could actually feel the impact of the collective efforts in paying taxes to better the community we live in, I think there'd be less frustration. Story 2. Preventative dental maintenance. I've lost count of the people who have proudly told me over the years that having your teeth cleaned by a hygienist is a scam, and that plaque is not really a thing. I've also had a surprisingly large number of seemingly rational people tell me that dentists create holes in your teeth so they can scam you with fillings. The fact that I have had at least 2 dentists tell me I have cavities that follow-ups with other dentists couldn't find, and that one tried to upsell me on braces that I don't need, makes me pretty wary too. Maybe I just have teeth that heal between visits, but I doubt it. Hashtag not all dentists, of course, but I've seen some bad ones. I had a dentist that was awesome for so many years. He was great, honest, and did really good work for fair prices. Then one day he moved offices, which I thought wasn't a big deal. My next visit with him was totally different. He suddenly told me I was grinding my teeth at night and needed to have the tops of all my teeth bonded to protect them. That he'd max out my insurance for the year and then proceed once the new calendar year started. I've had a chip in a tooth bonded before and it has fallen out twice over time. It's normal, bonding doesn't last, and sure as hell won't last long when it is on the biting surface. He also said he really thought I needed to have a few whitening treatments along with it. They wanted an ungodly amount of money for this procedure, and it just didn't feel right. When I left the office, they asked when I wanted to make an appointment for that work, and I declined, to which the receptionist wanted me to sign a copy of the chart showing I declined work to protect them from legal action. I might take from the negative health effects of declining important dental work. I declined, left, and some weeks later, they mailed me a copy of the chart like some kind of weird threat. None of it made any sense. Try to dig around and find a dentist that is still independent. It makes a huge difference. The ones that are part of these new owned groups will push services hard and will make diagnoses that are often BS so they can rake in the cash. Okay, I definitely get why people are kind of wary of dentists. They can be pretty creepy overall. And that's coming from someone whose best friend is a dentist. I always think back to Dr. Barber from The Misadventures of Flapjack. Surgery, yes. That is one shifty fellow. If you want a trustworthy dentist, you gotta find a guy named Crentist. Crentist the dentist. That's the guy to go to. Story 3. Hello, we've been trying to reach you about an important safety recall notice for your vehicle. Edit. Alright guys, serious stuff here. Go get your recalls fixed. Quit screwing around. It's a dangerous business. Call a dealership. Ask if there are any recalls. Get them done. I mean it. Edit 2. Moreover, I'm glad I've helped educate some people in the seriousness of this topic. Best part of this is that potentially I've helped some people not perish from the Takata Claymore-style airbag train wreck. Something I learned when car shopping years ago: if you're worried there's been a recall on your vehicle, call your local dealership. They'll ask you for the VIN number. They'll be able to tell you right away if there's been a recall. Had a shifty salesman try to sell me a car with multiple recalls. He swore up and down that everything had been taken care of and nothing needed to be replaced. I called my dad to ask, since we had a 10-week-old infant that would be riding in the car. He gave me the above advice. As it turned out, the car had 3 major recalls that hadn't been taken care of. Edit. Since some people are getting unreasonably angry with me for not buying the car, I'll clarify. Recalls are free to fix, and I wouldn't have had a problem doing it. But when I directly ask, there's been recalls with this, is everything taken care of? And I get the answer that yes, everything is taken care of, and yes, they're sure, only to find out I'm being lied to. Why would I buy from them? It was a used car place. They weren't a dealership. We decided to go to a dealership instead. You can also go to nhtsa.gov/recalls, if you're in the US at least, or your car manufacturer's website to check for open recalls. Just Google car manufacturer recalls. Should be within the first couple of results. Story 4. Literally anything that requires a signature. Confirmation that they've seen their doctor's care plan and we've reviewed it with them. Refuse to sign. Financial form that will get them free medications that normally cost over $1,000 a month. Refuse to sign. Form that allows us to provide them a nutritional supplement at no additional cost. Refuse to sign. Refusing a flu vaccine that could prevent them and the rest of the clinic from dying over the winter, and then also refusing to sign the form confirming that they've refused the vaccine. I had a friend who refused to sign her credit card because, if it gets stolen, they'll be able to copy my signature. I tried to convince her that if it's not signed, they won't even have to try to copy it. They can just use their own. But she wouldn't believe me. One time I was trying to pay for something with a new card, and I'd forgotten to sign it. Person tries to compare the signature to a form I just signed in front of them, alerting me to the fact that there's actually no signature on the card. I say, "Oh, sorry, forgot," and sign the card on the desk right in front of their nose. They then compare the signature to the form I signed 1 minute before. Yup, checks out. Payment approved. What? What kind of security measure is that? Some gas pumps only hold $1, so you can effectively get a full tank of gas a day or two before payday. On the other end of the spectrum, I've hit truck stops on I-95 that do a $150 authorization on my credit card when I begin to pump. Startled me the first time. Since the merchant name wasn't very descriptive, I thought the card was compromised, until I figured out what had happened. Story 5. People being paid for their time and knowledge. I hear, if you loved animals more and weren't so greedy, you would do this for free. Every day at my job. I would love to go into their offices and demand their services for free. Just ask them if they want to pay your bills, expenses, and feed you, and your family if you have one. I'm going to botch this, but I love the story about the company who had a major piece of equipment break on them, completely incapacitating operations. They, for the life of them, couldn't figure out how to fix it after spending days and days on it, losing their shirts and lost revenue. They called a specialist, who was the only person who knew the insides and outs of the machine. Management told him what was going on with the machine. The guy listened intently. He walked over to the machine, inspected it for a minute, pulled out his hammer, and hit a specific part of the machine a couple of times. The machine roared back to life, to good working order. He walked back over to management and handed them an invoice for $1,000. They were infuriated. He'd only spent 1 minute on it, so management asked him to provide an itemized invoice. He took the original invoice and wrote 2 lines on it. Number 1, labor charge, 5 minutes, $5. Number 2, knowing where to hit with a hammer, $995. Knowledge is valuable, my friends. You can do it yourself, but sometimes you just gotta shell out for someone who just knows. It saves you money. Edit. Someone down the chain shared a link to the actual story. smithsonianmag.com/history/Charles Proteus Steinmetz, the Wizard of Schenectady. I definitely agree with this one on both the knowledge side and the time side. Both are valuable. And for me, at least, I got to a point in my life where I started to value my own time more, to a degree where in the past where I would have done something by myself, a DIY, change my oil or something like that, I now know the value of my time per the hour based on the various jobs that I have. And I realize that it's actually worthwhile to pay somebody else to do it, probably better than I would have done it anyway, and recoup that time for myself. So overall, it's a win. Story 6. I own a business and I sell a lot of surplus inventory on Craigslist, OfferUp, eBay. I try to get as close as possible to what I paid for it so I can get my money back. Oftentimes, people don't have the money for a particular item, and I offer that they can leave me a deposit to hold it for them, $25 to $50, depending on the item. Most items are $500 to $1,000 range, just so I don't waste my time holding it. People always assume I'm trying to scam them, even though I write a receipt for them, make my ads down, etc., and I'm a reputable business. They are the ones that put me in this position by not having the money. Edit. Just to clarify, I'm not asking anyone to leave a deposit before they see the item. The way it typically works is someone comes out to look at an item, they like it, and ask me to hold it until they get paid on X date. I offer to hold it if they leave a deposit, and they freak out as though they don't trust me. Ask for a larger deposit. For some reason, people are more skeptical of smaller, seemingly too good to be true deposits. I ask for 50%. I've heard an anecdote about an elite tourism operation in New Zealand that would take people on private helicopter flights to go hunting. They couldn't work out why they had trouble getting business because it was a good offering compared to other operators in the other countries. Eventually, they doubled their prices without making any other changes, and suddenly were selling out. Turns out rich people don't trust things if they're too cheap. Story 7. Some old people still think stocks are a scam, or any financial investment for that matter. Yes, I know an older person who is very proud to have pulled all her money out of mutual funds at a time when the market went down. She seems to have this idea that it all went down and never came back up. Not just investing, a large portion of poor inner-city communities in America don't have any bank accounts and refuse to trust any banks with their money. There's a reason you see so many check cashing stores in these areas. People get paid with a physical check and cash it out ASAP. Of course, the check cashing places are a total scam. They take a pretty large cut of your paycheck, whereas depositing it in a savings account will actually gradually help you accrue interest. But there is so much mistrust of financial institutions that many people still won't open an account. There's also the matter that a lot of banks require you to keep a minimum balance, which many people in poor communities literally cannot afford, and they often get hit with all sorts of fees, like overdrafts, and the like, that people who aren't living paycheck to paycheck never have to deal with. I totally understand why people in these communities would be mistrustful of banks, but I can't imagine how much it would suck to have some shady corner store take 10 to 20% of my paycheck every week. Edit. Take those rates with a grain of salt. Apparently many places offer lower rates than that. This one also makes me think of the Depression era grandparents or people who grew up in that era where all the banks failed, and they would instead stuff all their money in their mattress or hide them in urns and cabinets around their house. That's certainly not as safe, but I mean, stuff only has value because we say it has value. Really, banks only are worth stuff. Your money in a bank is only worth what it says it's worth because we collectively agree that that's what the value, that the number in the database somewhere says that it is. Same with cryptocurrency. Collectively, if it all falls apart, then it's worthless. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 8. When I tell them they have a coupon for $50 off when they spend $100, and so far they've spent $60, so they can pick something else out that'll basically be free. There is a lot to be said for phrasing and delivery in customer service, something I learned after many years in sales. If no one is having the desired reaction when you're saying something, just stop saying it and find another way to put it. It isn't worth finding out who is stupid and who isn't. They may be dumb for not understanding, but there's also a bit of stupidity in continually trying something that doesn't work and expecting different results. At Costco, we sell certain bakery items in 2-packs, but you have to grab 2 different packages. Costco does this so you can mix and match varieties. However, at the register, if you tell someone we only sell them in a 2-pack, they almost always say they don't want it anymore. However, if you tell them it's buy one get one, they almost always go back and grab another one. Story 9. When the mechanic tells you that your brake pads are completely gone and says it's just bare metal to metal. My brake pad wear indicators were causing some squeezing recently. Took it to Nissan and they said I needed my brakes changed. If they left it at that, I probably would have told them to do it. But then they listed off that my fan belts and transmission fluid also needed changing. My car has 30,000 kilometers on it, so I became suspicious. I went home and checked the brake pads myself, and they were over 50%. Fan belt was fine. Rotors were smooth. The issue is that some mechanics will genuinely try to scam you. Brake pad gone? Better change the rear ones as well. Looks like the rotors are worn out too. Have to change them. Oh no, your tires don't match the new brakes. It'll be much safer if you change them. And now the suspension needs realigning to compensate for all those changes. When people know nothing about cars, it's far too easy for mechanics to make stuff up. Story 10. Unclaimed property. What I'm referring to is most, if not all, U.S. states have a website you can visit and enter your name, and it will search through a government database for any assets, usually money, that is owed to you. For example, let's say you were on the budget plan for your electric bill, and one day you cancel it and move away. Your remaining money sitting in that account was probably mailed to your old address, then returned to the sender. Now they give it to this government unclaimed property division, where it sits in this database for something like 10 years, after which time, if it's not claimed, the government keeps it. So yeah, sometimes I search my friends' names and let them know if there's an unclaimed property that they can claim. Usually such messages are ignored, or they try telling me my account was hacked due to suspicious messages they've received from me. Story 11. Artists who want money for their work, even for a friend or relative. Doing a piece of art takes time, talent, and effort. Some people want a detailed piece of art that will take hours to complete, and want it for free. Even if you're a friend or family member, it's still a lot of time and work. Please, pay artists for their work. I'm begging you. As a general rule, if you've requested something from someone and they spent their time on it, offer to compensate them generously, especially if it's someone you know well and will continue interacting with frequently. Compensation doesn't always mean money, but if they just carved you a life-size George Washington on a velociraptor out of oak, you'd better do more than offer to bake them cookies or babysit for them next Friday. Yes, same goes for Dungeon Masters if anybody plays Dungeons & Dragons. These DMs put in so much time and effort to craft these wonderful experiences for us, they definitely deserve something in return. Please thank your Dungeon Master. Story 12. Generic or store-brand versions of Tylenol, Aleve, etc. It's the same stuff, probably made in the same factory, just with a different label on it. Yet so many I know refuse to buy the generic or store brand because it costs less. It can't work as well. Not only those, but many generic foods are made on the same lines as name brands. Breakfast cereals are a big example. I also can't for the life of me figure out why people buy name brands of common staples. eggs, salt, sugar, etc. Cereal is one thing I buy as a name brand. I find that the name brand Captain Crunch doesn't get as soggy as quickly as the generic. Also, name brand Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I don't know, man. You shouldn't mess with a person's cereal. Funny generic cereal names always give me a kick. The knockoff brands. Nothing really comes to mind for cereal, but for Pop-Tarts, I would always eat Toast 'em Pop-Ups, and for whatever reason that really tickled me. Would love to hear if you guys have favorite generic cereal brands in the comments. Story 13. Unemployment benefits. There are many that I've worked with that didn't understand that unemployment payments aren't handouts from the government. One employee who truly was let go for no reason other than downsizing just refused to take it no matter how much I tried to explain it to him. It was sad because he really needed it and just couldn't understand that the employer pays into the unemployment fund specifically for this kind of thing. It's a shame and stigma associated with unemployment. I've had to convince people that it's money you put into a system for just this reason. It's ridiculous. I was unemployed for the last 6 months. I also put a poop ton of money into the system for the previous 11 years. No shame here. Story 14. My dad thought Steam was a shady company because $800 was taken off his credit card on a game. He later found out my brother took his card and was the one who spent all that money. My parents still think it's an illegitimate site no matter how many times I tell them that it basically has a complete monopoly on shopping for online gaming. My parents think it's used for money laundering, and that I, by buying games or skins or whatever, help them reach their goal. I think the difference for me is whether it's genuine need for support or if they're taking advantage. I think if you've been paying into the system and now you're down on your luck, for sure, you definitely deserve some support there. Even if you haven't been paying into the system, I think as a community we should support each other. But if it's clear that you've been taking advantage of the system and you actually have been able to correct your course and get yourself back on your feet, and you've somehow have skirted the rules and regulations and you're still taking advantage of unemployment, then that's a bigger problem. But it's not always black and white to tell what is going on in an individual person's life. So I'm hard-pressed to judge anyone's particular scenario. Story 15. My grandma thought buying anything online was a scam for years. Amazon, Xbox Store, ordering food, etc. She couldn't understand that you could actually buy stuff with your credit card without going to a physical place or saying it over the phone. Edit, she's fine with it now. The only thing she buys online is her medicine, but she has let me buy things using her card a few times when I was younger. This is the same as my father-in-law. He boasts regularly that he doesn't have internet banking and has never bought anything online, then complains regularly that the bank is only open after work hours on Thursdays. I have friends in their mid-20s who still ask me how I can trust Amazon. Story 16. My mom thinks sites that accept credit card payments are a scam. You know what'll really blow her mind? Assuming you live in the US, at restaurants you hand your server your credit card. They disappear and do God knows what with your card information, then return 5 minutes later. As a Canadian, this was the most messed up thing I ever experienced, paying at the restaurant in the US for the first time. In Canada, the waiter will just bring you the card machine to the table, and you do it yourself. I had no idea what the frick was going on when she brought me the check. Embarrassing. Story 17. The air in bags of chips. It is nitrogen, and it serves a dual purpose. First, to protect the chips, and second, to prevent them from going stale. You want your chips to be crispy, you have to have the nitrogen in there. Holiday and vacation insurance. Having previously traveled to USA, if anything went wrong where I needed medical assistance, I would be absolutely screwed without the insurance. Story 18. Internet connection speeds. They get 100 megabits per second speeds and think it's 100 megabytes per second, not realizing it's only 12.5 megabytes per second. Then they claim they have slow speeds because they can't download XYZ games in 4 seconds. Turns out I was one of the ones who never really understood how it worked. Thank you. MB with a lowercase b stands for megabits. MB with a capital B stands for megabytes. A bit is 1/8 of a byte, so a megabit is 1/8 of a megabyte. Story 19. When you're making a new account somewhere and it tells you to enter the email and a password for your account, some people think they're asking for the password to your email. I'm not remembering 2 passwords. Story 20. Me in the Aldi parking lot trying to trade someone my quarter for their cart. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.